And here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sports for Life podcast. As you know, I have been on a month-long hiatus. I went back home from school. The reason I wasn't filming a while ago, I had my finals, and then I went back home from school. So it has been a minute since we filmed. I since have a we'll say quasi beard. I don't know if it's not like quite a full beard, but that's where it stands right now. But anyway, we're back. I kind of added a background. It's a curtain. I can't really block off the entire wall. Um, but I'm hoping to make some overall better product than what I've been putting out in the past year. Um, there were a lot of things I just generally didn't like about the show, and hopefully a lot of those issues are fixed. But we'll see. But right now, I don't know. I wanted to add a background because I didn't like the background just being in my room. I'm still in my room. It's just the curtain that I've always had. Um, I hope you can't hear that noise in the outside. There's been a lot of traffic today, and I don't really know why. But that's neither here nor there. I thought I'd just give an explanation as to what's been going on lately. Like filming, and we can just go ahead and jump right into it. So the thing I wanted to start with were the NFL coaches who got fired. Um, the coaches who were fired were the Denver Broncos head coach Vic Fangio, the Miami Dolphins head coach, which was surprising to many, was Brian Flores, the New York Giants head coach Joe Judge, obviously Urban Meyer was fired, and then we have Minnesota Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer. And lastly, we have the Chicago Bears head coach Matt Nagy. So I'm going to just start in the order in which they were fired. I'm not going to talk about Urban Meyer because I feel like I may have already touched on that, or maybe I didn't. I haven't uploaded in a while, and I didn't ever touch on that. But either way, I'm not. I think that's kind of old news. I'm not going to talk about that much. But I do want to talk about the firing of Vic Fangio. He was hired in 2019 as the Broncos head coach, and honestly, he did. His tenure was kind of a failure. In his 3 years, he never had a winning record. He finished in fourth this year. I believe he finished in fourth 2 out of the 3 years as the Broncos head coach. And a lot of people will blame the quarterback situation, and I think that has some merit to it. Obviously, he never quite got a elite starting quarterback. He had Joe Flacco, then he had Drew Lock, and then he had Teddy Bridgewater. But to be fair, or I guess to counter that argument, would say that Vic Fangio was given someone who was supposed to become a franchise quarterback in Drew Lock, and coming out of college, I was very high on Drew Lock, and it was his job to develop him, and Fangio just never did. He honestly seemed kind of to hate Drew Lock. Generally, he was always very he felt very cold to him. He like literally right out of college, I don't I don't remember his exact words, but he was saying that he can throw hard, but he doesn't have any accuracy, and he seemed to imply that he can't be a starting quarterback. So, Vic Fangio had seemed to have a lot of issues with Drew Lock, and then they finished the year 0-3. They were 7-7. They started the year 3-0, and I think it made a lot of sense. I think it was time for Vic Fangio to go, and I will get into who I think each team should replace a little bit later. The next coach who was fired was very shockingly was Brian Flores. Um, I was legitimately surprised when this happened. Now they started the year 1-7, but to finish the year they went 8-1, and they won 7 straight. He beat the Patriots twice, which that doesn't happen, especially if you're Miami. They have not swept the Patriots in a very long time. So for Flores to sweep the Patriots and then to be fired, it was honestly really surprising. He actually had a winning record as the Dolphins head coach, although he failed to miss the playoffs this year. Um, it really felt like they're going to. He's going to stick around for another year. And then there was rumors were released that Brian Flores didn't want Dolphins starting quarterback Tua Tagovailoa anymore. Appeared to be completely done with him, and then there was a article recently in which it said that Flores wanted to draft Justin Herbert, and ownership wanted to draft Tua. So, if you're Brian Flores, that's not what he wanted. Tua was not the guy he wanted out of college, and he wanted Justin Herbert. And then Chris Grier, the Dolphins general manager, wanted Tua. Now, Chris Grier has been with the Miami Dolphins organization for 20 years now. And this is his, I think, third year as the general manager. So, if you look at the situation, it makes a lot of sense why the Dolphins owner Stephen Ross would choose Grier over Flores. He's known him for 20 years. And then, of course, Flores and Grier have been at odds with each other. So, although I don't think I wouldn't have fired Brian Flores, but because he is a good head coach, it makes sense, I think, on some level why he was fired. Because, if you draft a franchise quarterback, because them firing Flores tells me that Tua Tagovailoa is the franchise quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, and they are fully committed to him. At least that's what I'm getting from it. So they need someone who would actually, want to work with Tua. Now, I will say this: I think the Dolphins is not a good coaching job. Because I think the way a lot of candidates would look at it is like, oh, well, Brian had a winning record in Miami, and you just fired him. So what type of job security is that? So I think that's something that's definitely going to be a challenge to overcome. And then, it's not a very good roster, honestly. The offensive line is terrible, and they really need to fix that. They have two good Devontae Parker is never healthy, so I wouldn't count him as like a good wide receiver. But they have two good wide receivers, Jalen Waddle, who's quite good, a great route runner, and I think he's going to be a star. And then they have the tight end Mike Gesicki, who I also really like. But aside from that, they have a lot of problems on the offense. The defense is actually quite good, but otherwise, it's a challenging situation if you're a candidate. I don't know why you'd want to go work for Miami, especially since the way I look at it is you might get fired. I don't know why this is here. Sorry. That's my case for the earbuds. That's kind of weird. Oh, anyway. Next up, the coach who was fired was Mike Zimmer. This was a long time coming. Unless the Minnesota didn't make the playoffs, and he was definitely gone. He seemed kind of bitter towards the end there, and I think it was time to part ways. He's a really good defensive coordinator, but he's not quite good a head coach anymore. There are a lot of problems. He's kind of outdated. He likes to run the ball, and I understand liking to run the ball, especially if Dalvin Cook is your running back. But there were a lot of problems in Minnesota. He constantly underachieved. And also, the Vikings general manager, Rick Spielman, was fired. And this, I think the reason Rick Spielman was fired is they just kind of want to restart. And also, he did sign Kirk Cousins. So the Kirk Cousins experiment has been a massive failure so far because he was signed to a contract with the intent of winning a Super Bowl. And in 4 years, he has one playoff win. So, and playoff wins are nice, but that doesn't constitute a franchise quarterback. It's certainly not one for the amount of money they spent on Kirk Cousins. So that is an issue. That's the reason Rick Spielman was fired. Mike Zimmer. It was time to go. Now the nice thing is Minnesota's a great job opportunity. I think that's up there with Denver as like the two best job openings in my opinion. I don't think Las Vegas is going to be open. So that is where that stands. And then Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace were both fired from Chicago. This made a lot of sense. As a Packers fan, I was rooting for Matt Nagy to stick around as the Bears head coach, but he is gone, and he had, I'll say decent tenure. I don't think it was quite as bad as a lot of people think it was. He had He was their coach for 4 years. He only had one losing season, by the way. It was only this year. I guess he went 8-8 twice. So I guess that counts as a winning season. It doesn't count as a losing season. That's how it stands. He went 12-4, won coach of the year. He won 8-8. Plus 8-8 made the playoffs, courtesy of a 7 seed, and they got smoked in the playoffs. And then he went 7-10, and missed the playoffs. They ended up winning their final 3 games. They don't have a first round pick, so honestly, it didn't really matter. They did not see much of Justin Fields the entire season. He's been dealing with injuries. So that's where Matt Nagy, it made sense. He kind of had to go. Now, I will say this. I think Ryan Pace was much more of an issue than Matt Nagy. He didn't have really any good drafts. He came in 2017 and drafted Mitchell Trubisky, which was a bad pick. 2018 he drafted Roquan Smith, who's been great, but I think anyone could have told you Roquan Smith was going to be a good player. 2019 they traded both their first round picks for Khalil Mack, and then in 2021 they landed Justin Fields. So it's not only that, and the Khalil Mack trade was a great trade on his part, but, it's not only that they missed out on just Mitch Trubisky was the big thing, but also a lot of their late round picks were really bad. Last year they drafted tight end Cole Kmet, who has not been very good. So they've just constantly missed on draft picks, which has really hurt them as a team. So and that is the reason Ryan Pace was fired, and obviously he was never able to draft an offensive line or do anything to fix the offensive line. It's been horrible for years now in Chicago. And as for Matt Nagy, it just kind of seemed like it was time to part ways. My neck is sore. I don't know why. I was on a plane last night. All right, and the final team that fired their head coach, at least for now, are the New York Giants. They fired Joe Judge after 2 years. The Giants have gone through 3 head coaches in the past 6 years. So they had Ben McAdoo from 2016 to 17. Then he went 14-18 as a head coach. And then they had Pat Shermer from 2018 to 2019. I believe he went 9-21 as head coach. That can't be right. Not 9-21. I think he went, maybe it was 10-22. I think he went 5-11 twice. I'm not exactly sure about it. And then they had Joe Judge, who went 10-23 as a head coach. So the Giants have been just honestly a trash organization for the past 5 years, and it's definitely the worst job opening. They don't have any cap space. They have absolutely none. They don't have a quarterback. Dave Gettleman also retired, so he's out as well. There's just nothing good about the Giants. It's the worst job. I mean, the one benefit you could say is it's in the NFC East. So at least the division is out of all the divisions, probably the most manageable, I would say. But aside from that, that is not a ideal landing spot. Now, I suppose if you came in as the plan is, hey, we're gonna go get a quarterback. They have 2 top 10 picks. Maybe they could trade for Deshaun Watson. Although I don't know how that. We'll see how that works out. But at the moment, it is definitely not an ideal landing spot. But yeah, those were the coaches who have been, obviously Urban Meyer and John Gruden both let go. So there are, I'm going to say 6 head coaching opens because I don't think the Raiders are going to move off their interim head coach. So we currently have 6 head coach openings, and next up I will tell you which candidate each team should hire and just rank the openings.